Welcome back to Danny Robertson Music, where we're helping you become the performer that you're meant to be. I'm Danny Robertson. Thanks for joining me again this week. Today, I want to talk about something that is often controversial when you look at social media groups that are related to performers. It has to do with the subject of speaking on stage. There are a lot of you out there that seem to think that the less you speak on stage, the better. And to an extent, I agree that there is a format for this. It makes sense to focus in on the entertainment value of the music. That's what a lot of you do best. And that's where you should put a lot of your eggs in that basket, okay? Where you're probably missing out on is creating that connection with your audience. There's 3 specific things that I recommend talking about on stage in order to create a better relationship where 1, your audience gets to know who you are a little bit. 2, your audience gets to know your venue a little bit. And 3, you get to build a relationship with your audience. Before we dive in, I do want to set this disclaimer. This is, as usual, my opinion of the situation. You are very welcome to agree or disagree at your own will. Leave it in a comment. And actually, this will be great information that if you have a singer or somebody that does not do well talking on stage, they may want to hear this information, okay? This is great, usable stuff. While I do personally believe that too much talking can be a bad thing on stage, you do want to have specific things that you want to do on stage to gain momentum in building that relationship with your audience. So let's talk about it. So, first thing you want to do when you're performing on stage and you want to talk to your audience, what's the first thing you need to talk about? You need to tell your audience about who you are, where you come from, how long you've been together, anything that is useful for them gaining more information about you. So, things like the band name. Believe it or not, I've gone through entire shows or I've seen entire shows where the band never once mentions their name. And if it's not on some banner on the back of the stage, no one's ever going to know. You have to say your band name. You also want to include things like your website or your social media channels, things that you are going to be able to send people to, giving them a call to action to follow you to the next location that you play, the next event that you're doing, what they can find out more about you. It's all very useful to point them in 1 or 2 places like a website or a social media channel. Some other things that bands don't often talk about is what are the names of the members on the stage? A lot of bands do this in a way that takes up a lot of time on stage, and it ends up actually boring the audience by the end of it. Introduction of each band member and give them a chance to make a solo happen on stage for a single song, kind of showing off each musician. But that one song ends up lasting 20 minutes because everybody's got to have a little solo. And it's kind of a waste of time. In my experience, something that works better is to introduce single members of the band as they're starting the next song. So like if you've got a song that starts with the drum set, then at that point you can introduce the drummer by name and he's going to start us off for this song. And that way you've given everybody their little spotlight without taking this extended period of time that starts to bore the audience, okay? Mention the members of the band by name. And if you have a story about any of those members, that's a great thing to talk about. I've played in bands where, like, I know a trumpet player that has played with Pink and Adele and Keith Urban and a bunch of other names, and she's been on stage with a lot of them. I have a drummer that I play with that played with the Broadway version of The Lion King for 2 years. Some other things that you can bring up are like your band history, how you guys met, how you guys started working together, maybe some of the first shows you played together, maybe some of the best shows you've played together. The intention with all of that is that you're trying to let your audience into your circle of friends, your world, letting them see a side of you that they don't know, and that lets them feel a little bit closer to you. So bring up your name of your band, talk about how to find you, and talk about some things that are involved with your history or your relationships within the band. It lets the audience get to know you just a little bit better. The next thing you want to talk about on stage is your venue and the people that work for that venue. You want to show that the venue is valuable to this audience. They serve great things like food and drink specials. They have great people that make great food or great cocktails, and they're ready to serve you, and they're awesome people to work with. And you want to show that you have a great relationship with that venue. So if there's a sound person running the sound for you, you want to mention them by name. You want to say, hey, let's give a big thanks to this person behind the soundboard who's been running our sound and lights all night. One of the things that I like to do is I like to talk about the bartenders that are behind the bar or the servers that are serving out at the tables. For example, a bartender might make a drink that you like. You can talk about that bartender on stage and maybe use something like a specialty drink that bartender is the only one that makes it well. So for example, I used to work with a guy named Mac at one of the clubs that I play with. At one point, I asked Mac to make me something unique that was kind of fitting my taste buds on that particular day. So Mac made a concoction of his own design that I tasted, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And I said to Mac, so what are you going to call this? And he said, well, why don't we call it a Mac Attack? So for the next few times that I played at that location, I would bring up the fact that Mac made me this awesome drink called a Mac Attack, and I'd suggest everybody try it. And a few people would. And that helped the bar. It helped Mac as a bartender feel good. And we had a better relationship because of that. So talk about the venue. Talk about your relationship with the people at the venue. But one thing you should never, ever do is talk about the next place you're playing. This should be common knowledge. It should be common sense, but it's not. I've heard bands that are playing at a place and go, come see us next week at the place right down the street. What do you think happened to that relationship? I'm sure that bar did not book that band ever again. Instead, what you can do is you can talk about how you will be performing at this place that you're at the next time in 3 to 4 weeks or something like that. Or if you don't know when you're playing next time, you might want to find out what other big events the venue is having so that you can advertise for them from the stage. I know a bar that does a very big event around St. Patrick's Day every single year. And you might be playing there in February and want to bring it up. Don't forget to come to their big event on St. Patrick's Day. By bringing up an event that you may not even be a part of, you're actually showing that there's goodwill between the band and the bar, and you actually build that relationship a little bit better that way. The third and final thing that you want to talk about on stage is actually more of a conversation that you want to have. You want to talk to your audience about your audience. You want the people in your crowd to feel like they are at home with the band. You want your fans to feel like they have a relationship with you so that they enjoy the show even more and participate in the show even more. So to give you an example of this, let's talk about one of my private students that I've worked with who lives down in Florida. She performs sometimes with a band and sometimes with a solo or duo setup where she does much more audience interaction. And because of her location in Florida, she gets a lot of tourists that come through. We had a conversation not that long ago where we talked about how she sees a lot of people from the state of Ohio. The interaction that happens with that tends to be where are you from and who are you coming to see or what are you coming to do in Florida? But what we talked about is that there are certain things that she can gather as information to continue the conversation with the people that are coming to see her. So, for example, when people come from Ohio, she had mentioned to me that there are a lot of Ohio State fans that come and talk about Ohio State. So I said, do you know who's Ohio State's main rival? In most cases, people know that the University of Michigan and Ohio State have a big rivalry. The University of Notre Dame and Ohio State have a big rivalry. And if you watch college football in any way, shape, or form, you probably know that. So I told her about how she can take another step with this. Learn about the culture of what that means to Ohio State people. They have that rivalry of Michigan, so you can capitalize on that. So for example, you can say a joke like this. How do you make Michigan cookies? You put them into a bowl and beat them for 3 hours. Every Ohio State fan is going to love that joke. And if you've got a lot of those fans in the crowd, you can capitalize on that. That joke works both ways. So if you get a lot of Michigan fans, you can say the same thing to a bunch of Michigan fans. The point with all of this is to learn to listen to the information that is available to you from your audience and use that to continue the conversation, whether it be playing music or talking with the audience. You can learn a lot about your fans just by asking a few questions and getting to know them a little bit. And that can help you to get your fans dancing, participating in your show, and feeling a lot more connected to the performance and you as the performer. So that's it for today. And our simple recap is when you're talking on stage, remember to talk about yourself, the performer, talk about your venue and your relationship with your venue, and have a conversation with your audience. Get to know your audience so that you can work with them to participate more in your show and feel great about being at the experience that is your performance. If you do want to dive deeper into these kinds of things, we talk a lot about this in great detail at DannyRobertsonMusic.com. We even have a course that's called Public Speaking for Entertainers, and we dive into the nitty-gritty details about how this works and how you can understand the psychology of it in order to make the experience better for both you and your fans. So check out Danny Robertson Music when you get a chance. And just so you know, we do have some freebies that you can take advantage of right out of the gate there. So until next time, remember to talk about yourself, the performer, talk about your venue, and have a conversation with your audience to get to know them better. Best of luck to you on your next performance, and we'll see you soon. Take care.